Hello everyone, welcome to this demo of the SharePoint Sandbox Solution Scanner. My name is Bert Jans, I'm a service engineer at Microsoft, and with me I have Vesa Juvonen.
Hello.
Hey Vesa, so let's jump into the details right away. So what's this all about? So you most likely already have heard that we have stopped support for code-based sandbox solutions. So these are WSP packages which contain an assembly. This is not something really new. It was already announced back in 2014, but now we really made it happen.
Well, to be fair, Bert, I would say that deprecation was announced back in 2014. Now we're actually removing the support. So
absolutely, yep. So which essentially means it's time for you to transform your sandbox solutions that you still have to alternative solutions. Not all sandbox solutions that you have are relevant. Not all of them have to be fixed. You will learn more in the coming slides and in the demo. But there will be cases where you will have to fix your sandbox solutions. And for doing so, the recommended approach is using the SharePoint add-in model. Or in general, actually, we have a lot of client-side APIs that you can use to build rich solutions on SharePoint. And that's the pattern to use to transform your sandbox solutions. Now, before you can transform your sandbox solutions, you actually need to know where are they and how many do you have and how many of those do you need to fix, etc. So a lot of questions to get answers for. And we have two tools for you available. So we announced a PowerShell Sandbox Solution Scanner script, I think, Vesa, about 10 days ago, so 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And that was our first version. In the meanwhile, we've been working on a slightly more enhanced scanner solution, which we're announcing with this in this session. And so we have these both tools. And you can see the URLs over here, and they're also repeated again in the later on in the slides. But since there are two tools, you probably want to know what's the difference between the two tools. Why do we have two tools? And the main reason why we have the new tool versus the PowerShell tool is twofold. First of all, this new tool also supports SharePoint on-premises environments, 2016, 2013. So if you're migrating your SharePoint 2016, 2013 environments to SharePoint Online, for example, you can't migrate your sandbox solutions which are living in on-premises. So at that point, you're definitely interested in knowing where they are and how to tackle them. And the second big thing that was not available in the previous solution is app only. So the script and the tool, they both will check the site collection and see what sandbox solutions are active in that site collection. To be able to do so, we need to have permissions to look inside the site collection. You might wonder, like, okay, I have tenant admin permissions, and I have my tenant admin account actually, and I give that to the tool, and that's what the approach used in this PowerShell script, and it works typically for smaller environments, but in larger environments, there is not one admin account that has permissions to all site collections. And with app only, you can actually achieve that by creating an app only token with the tenant level permissions. We'll show you how to do that in the demo, which is coming after this slide. Some other advantages of this tool is it also scans OneDrive for Business or My Sites. It by default uses multi-threading, so by default the tool uses 10 threads, which will definitely give you a boost in performance. It also will help you detect empty assemblies. So when you create a WSP package for Sandbox solution with Visual Studio, by default there's always an assembly, even if you haven't written any line of code. Now, those sandbox solutions are the ones which you call having an empty assembly. And those can be easily fixed by simply dropping the empty assembly. So what the tool will do for you is it will list that this particular sandbox solution has an empty assembly, and it will also generate a new sandbox solution package without the assembly. So which you can then later on use to upload it and to get full functionality without having the dependency on code-based Sandbox solutions. It will also do this, by the way, for InfoPath. So it will tell you that this InfoPath Sandbox solution actually contains useless or empty code and can be dropped as such. And finally, the tool will also give you a view on what's inside your Sandbox solution package. So it will tell you, like, okay, there are web paths inside, there's list templates inside, there's a workflow custom action, there is a feature receiver, event receiver. All of those details are listed for you. And this information is useful if you want to scope the work that you need to do to transform your solutions.
So really what you're saying, Bert, and what we're saying with the scanner tool is that this is targeted for larger enterprises where you might have even thousands of Sandbox solutions. And since we don't have a, let's say, UI in the admin UIs where the central, where the administrator can go and see what's there and what's the details, this is no doubt the easiest tool to actually get a overall view on what do I actually have, what do I need to tackle. And it also works on premises, which is a good point as well.
Yes, I think for large enterprise scenarios, this is the only tool that can do the work at the moment.
Yep.
Okay, enough chit-chatting. Let's actually show the tool in action. So in the demo, I will first walk you through the steps to create an app-only principal with the right permissions. And then we will download the tool and run the tool against my SharePoint Online tenant. And finally, we will conclude with doing a quick run inside a SharePoint on-premises environment. So let's switch to my team site. So I'm in my tenant in the root site collection, but in this case, any site collection in your tenant that you want to scan is fine. So go to a site collection where you have access, and then go to the app rec u.hpx page. This is the page where you can define an app only, a principal. So click on generate to fill the client secret fields. Give it a name, have a title. I call it SB Scanner for now. www. Doesn't really matter that much. SBScanner.com.
Yeah, we don't actually use these values in the execution, so.
But they need to be
valid
values. Yeah.
Localhost, HTTP localhost, HTTPS localhost is fine as well.
All right, we have something in there. I'm going to hit the create button. It creates a principal. Now you need to copy this information. So I'm going to copy it over here, copy, and actually I'm going to paste it in inside another screen. All right. Well, let's copy this one as well, like this. So the principal has been created, but it doesn't have any permissions yet. Now, since we want to have a principal that can scan all site collections in your complete tenant, we need to give it tenant scoped permissions. And in order to give it tenant scoped permissions, you have to use the tenant administration center to grant those permissions. So I just navigated to my tenant admin center, SharePoint admin center. And what I will do here is I will call the app inf page. If I hit enter, I get a page in which I can paste the previously created app ID or client ID. I can do a lookup, and if everything went well, and it does, it shows you the data that you entered previously when you created the principal. The final step here is giving it a permission XML, which describes what kind of permissions that you need. And for doing this, I would recommend going to the tool location. So if you go to the Sandbox tool, in the documentation, if you scroll down, we describe this process that I'm showing in the demo right now, but we also have a piece of XML that you can copy paste. here. Important here is scope, tenant, and the right full control. You need to do it like this. If you give lesser permissions, the tool will not work.
Which will obviously mean in the enterprise scenario, this has to be a tenant administrator with the sufficient permissions and approvals and all of that to perform. But now, because this is scanning across all of the site collections within that particular tenant.
Yes, actually, you need to indeed be tenant administrator. And I would also want to emphasize that the client ID client secret combination that you use and that you grant these permissions must be safeguarded like being your admin credentials. Because with that combination of client ID client secret, you can access all data. So it's crucial that you correctly manage the client secret for this particular principle.
Yeah. Just one additional note while you're clicking the create and giving the permissions for it. So one thing to notice was that we went to the admin URL, and this is a relatively new change. So in the past, you might have been able to register tenant level permissions within using the normal SharePoint URLs, but it's a relatively recent change since spring 2016, where if you are requesting a tenant level permissions, you need to go to this admin URL and app in ASPX underneath there to make that happen. So it's a security kind of additional security layer for granting the right level of a permission.
Yes, indeed. So I'm going to hit create. And at that point, SharePoint will ask me whether I trust the principal with its permissions. So the principal is asking full control. And is letting it share permissions with other users, which is the definition of app only. So in this case, there's only one answer, trusted. If you don't trust it, it will not work. So I'm going to click trusted. At this point, our client ID client secret combination has been granted with tenant level permissions, so we can use it in the tool. So let's move to the next step. Let's use the tool. So first step is downloading the tool. If you go to our GitHub Office FP&P Tools repo, you can find the tool in this URL. But the easiest if you just go to PNP Tools. It's under Solutions because it's in .exe. It's not a PowerShell script anymore. So they belong under Solutions. And here we have SharePoint.sandbox tool. If you scroll down in documentation, at the very beginning, you will find a download link for the tool. So in this case, I'm going to download and test for SharePoint Online. Notice there are 3 versions. Pick the right version. So I'm just going to click on the link. I'm going to save the output to a folder Sandbox, C Sandbox, save. All right, let's extract the tool. Or we can drop the zip file by now. So we have the tool extracted over here. I'm going to start the PowerShell window. Type sandbox tool.exe. If you do that, you will get the help of the tool. There's quite a lot of options. Not all of them are immediately needed. They're also documented in detail in the help text on GitHub. Now let's do a simple basic scan for a multi-tenant SharePoint environment. So I'm going to specify a mode, scan and analyze. There are 3 modes. There's also a scan mode, which just does a basic scan, giving a basic report. Scan and download does the basic scan plus pulls down the WSP packages. Scan and analyze does the basic scan, pull down the packages, and analyze the packages. Look inside and give you information about what's inside and offer you packages which are fixed. So this is the recommended mode to use. Then I'm going to specify my tenant. So my tenant was bertonline.sharepoint.com, my SharePoint URL. So I just specify bertonline. That's my tenant name. And finally, I need to specify the client ID. I'm gonna paste it, copy it from my other screen, and specify the secret. Let's hit enter to start the scanning. So what the tool now will do is it will collect, first of all, a list of all site collections in your tenant. In this case, it's the regular site collections, but also the one for business site collections. So once we have collected the list of site collections, that list will be divided by the number of threads. So by default, this tool will use 10 threads. So each of the 10 threads takes 1/10 of the site collection list and starts processing it. So it will then go to the site collection, have a look into the solution gallery, checks which solutions are there. If there is a solution with an assembly, it will be downloaded. Once downloaded, we will open up the solution package, look inside, have a look inside the assembly, have a look inside what kind of artifacts are defined in the solution. And all of that is then outputted by the tool. So the tool just finished and it took 47 seconds, which is pretty okay. Sometimes performance is slightly faster, sometimes slightly slower. It kind of depends a bit on the SharePoint Online performance of the moment. Now let's have a peek at what the tool generated for us. So I switch now back to the Sandbox folder where the tool was residing, and in there you see a subfolder. So we create a subfolder per tool execution. You will never ever overwrite previous output data. So if we go inside the folder, there is a report, which is the main deliverable of this tool. If there are errors, they are logged as well in a report, in a separate report file. And then there is a set of folders on which I'll explain later on. So let's first have a look inside of the report. So the easiest way to show it is go to Excel and import the results. So I'm going to import the text data. It's under C, Sandbox. So then the folder, then the report file, hit import. This is the limited data with a comma as default delimiter. Hit finish, OK. Home. And format as a table. At this point, we have a proper clean table. So what does it show? First of all, it shows all the Sandbox solutions that it encountered. If they have an assembly. Well, actually, it gives detailed information if they have an assembly, but it will list all of them. So these are all the assemblies, all the Sandbox solutions, in my environment. So it's 20 pieces. And when I look at the further data, I see an activated column and has assemblies column. So what's important for you to know, Sandbox solutions which are not activated might not be business relevant anymore and can be skipped in your further remediation activities. Sandbox solutions without assemblies keep on working. There's no problem with those guys. So only the ones having an assembly are to be investigated. If the Sandbox solution has an assembly, we're also showing you a site owner column because you might want to reach out to the business party owning that particular site collection. Now, what other data do we have? We have the original author and creation data of the Sandbox solution. We have the solution hash. So the solution hash uniquely identifies the Sandbox solution. We use this in the tool to only analyze a solution once. So if we downloaded and analyzed a particular solution and we encounter the same solution in another site collection somewhere, we just list it in here, but we're not downloading it anymore. We have the site ID, which is the site ID of the site collection. So, and this corresponds to the folders you'll see in the output, which we'll discuss in a minute. Then we have a set of important fields. Oops, scroll a little bit back. Like this. So we will indicate whether this is an empty assembly or not. So when you create a Sandbox solution using Visual Studio, by default, there's always an assembly. Even if you haven't written a line of code, there is an assembly. Now those guys, they can be easily fixed by repackaging the solution without assembly and redeploying it. So it's important to be able to distinguish those, which is this column. When you deploy an infopod form with code behind, SharePoint will create a sandbox solution for you. And this is what this column is indicating, whether this sandbox solution is coming from infopod or it's a regular sandbox solution. In the case of infopods, we can also have empty assemblies. And if that's the case, they will be listed over here. And then we have a set of columns giving you a bit more insight in the solution. So whether the solution has web parts, web templates, feature receivers, event receivers, list definitions, and workflow actions. This data is useful for you if you want to further scope and plan your transformation work. Now let's switch back to the folder. So as already mentioned in the report, there is a subfolder per site collection which contains Sandbox solution having an assembly, because we download those Sandbox solutions and we want to have a unique place to store them. So this folder name corresponds with the site collection ID. So if we take the first one and have a peek inside, you will notice a number of things. First of all, we've downloaded the solution package. You see these are all downloads of the solution package. We also generate an XML file per solution package describing the inside. So we have a solution analyzer component that looks inside the solution package and tells you like that there are 5 features, and feature 1 has a web part, feature 2 has a workflow custom action, etc. All of this information that's helpful for you to scope your work is inside this XML file. And finally, if the solution contained an assembly and if we detected that a particular assembly is empty, we flag that in the report as you saw before, but we will also generate a new solution package without the assembly. So we just repackaged the original one without the assembly. And those guys are called, have an underscore fixed suffix. So they take the same name and add underscore fixed .wsp. You can use these to upload again to the solution gallery to actually solve your Sandbox solution with code behind, because at that point there is no Sandbox solution anymore with code behind. All right, so you saw the tool in action in a SharePoint Online context. Now let's have a quick look at how this also can work for SharePoint on premises. So I have here, if I find it, here it is. I have a SharePoint 2013 on premises environment. And I already downloaded the tool, so it's over here. So I'll do the same trick. I'll start a PowerShell session. Here we go. If I launch the tool without parameters, it will give the help text and I'll show the options. You will notice that on premises there's less options, and the main reason is because on premises we're not supporting app only. We only allow you to use a username in combination with its domain and the password. And the reason is simple, because you can grant a particular user access to all site collections using web application policy. Okay, now let's launch the tool for on-premises. It's slightly different than you've seen in the online demo. So the tool, I'm going to paste in the command line arguments. So we again have the mode scan and analyze. And then we have the -r parameter, which stands for URLs, which is listing a set of wildcard URLs that you want to scan. So in online, you specified -t and then the tenant name, and that's it. Here you have to really specify the wildcard URLs that you want to scan. We specify a username, a password, and the domain of that particular user. Hitting enter launches the tool, same procedure. We build a list of site collections and then we scan them. In this case, it went really, really quick because it's on premises and there's not that many site collections as well. Now, looking at the output, you see the similar output, the reports and a folder containing, in this case, one of the Sandbox solutions which contained an assembly. So we have downloaded that one. All right, so this concludes this demo. So let's switch back to slides. I think this sums up this session. Here you can see the links to the tool and also to the MSDN guidance that describes overall Sandbox transformation approach that we have.
And just to reinforce the kind of a message, why are we doing this? So all of the Sandbox solutions which have assembly within a SharePoint Online can no longer be activated. So existing ones are still up and running. At some point, we will actually shut down the code-based execution of those assemblies as well. So you, as a tenant administrator, you want to know how much Sandbox solutions are used, where are they used, and which of them have an assembly. So which of them are actually impacted by this change. This doesn't apply for Sandbox solutions which only contains XML-based customizations or assets. And the removal of Sandbox solution code-based support doesn't apply for on-premises. But again, like Bert mentioned when we started the webcast, if you're planning to move from on-premises to SharePoint Online, you absolutely need to understand if you have a dependency on Sandbox solution in on-prem and how to then replace that. But I think that's it, Bert,
Yep,
right?
that's it. That sums it up very nicely, Vesa. Thank you.